All right, welcome. I'm Sean. Today we're going to be talking about my project, Free Portraits, I did here in Soho. Kind of a crazy project. We're going to go through some of the details of it. I want to start out giving like a huge thanks to people. The Harlow team, they provided all the lights that I was able to use, which is huge. Obviously, you can't do a lot of photography without lights, so they came in clutch on that. Also, Peak Design for having us here. Really great to have a space to like present work and then give talks like this and meet people, hang out. Oh, sorry. And then a huge shout out to Leica, because the Leica guys were super supportive as I was building everything. So I shot everything on the Leica Q, and they were helpful, like getting feedback on things. And then for tonight, once we wrap up, I'm going to do some portraits of people, and they loaned out an M EV1 and a 35 Summilux to play with today. So I also have to give a shout out to my wife, who's over here. She honestly probably put up with too much of me being like, all these photos suck. Nobody wants to look at this anyway. Why am I even out here? I also missed a lot of dinners at home, and she was eating dinner by herself, so I figured we could also go into about me. Some information. I had a lot of people ask me like, what was my history? How did I get into photography and things like that? I always say that I got into it from my dad. So my dad, right here, always had a camera on him. Every single time we'd go on a family trip or anything like that, he always taking pictures. See me and my brother at Elephant Rocks in Missouri. So anytime there was a scenic overlook, he had to get out and take a picture. Family get-togethers, canoeing trips, or even just standing in the front yard. So he actually gave me a camera when I was 13, and in 2010 I started to realize you could actually do something with photography. While I was in college, I was working at the student newspaper, and I was photographing there, and realized that like you could add photos to the text and really like tell a full story about everything, and I really loved that. A couple of years later, I was at Webster University, where I actually graduated from, and where I met Symphony. And then I realized like you could play with compositions, you could really start to tell a story of photography. And that's where it really started to kick off for me. In 2014, I went out and on a whim bought a Canon Rebel T6, which I even surprised Symphony with. She didn't know I was going to buy that. And that really just started everything. So we took a trip to Chicago, and I was able to make some portraits of people, and it really kicked things off for me. So I started photographing out on the streets in St. Louis, in abandoned buildings, of course, trips to Wyoming. In 2016, I was like, maybe I could actually make a career out of this. That would be so cool. So I was photographing constantly. I photographed my first wedding, photographed my friend, Ryan, as I started to learn lighting. I started to photograph models and different people in our area, playing with lighting. And in 2017, I got an opportunity to start doing photography full time. That's where I met this guy, Kevin, back here, back in St. Louis. Worked for a little agency where I was able to go on site and photograph everything from cars to people, portraits, Kevin's own photo, as well as going on site and photographing ad campaigns. For a short time, I even got a trip to Texas. We got to fly around in helicopters for a couple weeks, or a week. It's like a week. In my spare time, I was still photographing constantly. So this is a photo that I took. We just set up in the middle of an alley somewhere in Clayton, Missouri. And I made this photo trying to make it look like we were in a studio so nobody could tell. But that actually opened up doors because somebody saw us out there photographing and then invited us to the roof. And they let us photograph on the roof for a couple minutes. In 2018, we moved to Washington, D.C., and it was in DC that I started working as a real estate photographer, photographing some of the most beautiful homes you've ever seen. As you can see. The joy of my life. But I was still photographing a lot. So every time there was a get-together, a walk with locals, a different meetup, I was going out and I was photographing people constantly. It was exactly what I wanted to be doing. Going on photo walks with friends, I was photographing buildings, cool little areas. And then in 2021, we moved to New York City. And moving to New York City, I was super excited, and I did not want to apply for a job. I wanted to freelance. That's what I wanted to do when I got here. So it started to work out. I started to photograph just about anything anybody would give me to photograph. So here I did some flowers for Brooklyn Blooms. Did a bunch of real estate again, a little prettier this time. I was taking any assignment I could get, so here I am at SailGP. And I was still photographing as much skateboarding as I could possibly photograph. And then I even got hit by a skateboard.
Welcome to New York.
All right, I saved the board. It actually shattered the lens, which is a bummer, but. And then I started renting a little studio around the corner, which was a lot of fun. It was a really tiny space, but it gave me the opportunity to meet more models, work with agencies. Then I started meeting people in the local community. We got Jason back here in the background. That's just a picture of him. It's not really Jason. Rob, of course, from the Leica store. Kieran, who unfortunately couldn't be here this evening, with Todd Heido. Andrew, who's with Harlow. And I started to attend all these different events that Harlow is putting on, going out and testing all the equipment out in the field, helping people with lighting. And I started to make images, seeing what you could do with these with these lighting systems. So that's how I got there. So the real start to the actual project is I received a message from Andrew, and he said, I pitched you to Kieran as the go-to on-the-street photographer ready for anything. And I went with that. I tried to think of how I could go onto the street and photograph as freely as I could. I grabbed a few different tools, a Cardellini clamp, a grip head, and I kind of set up a setup that I could take anywhere in the city. If I could get there, I could do it. Ready to adapt, no matter where I was. So the setup itself fits into a 35-liter bag pretty easily. You can get the whole thing in there and carry it around on your back. With the Cardellini clamp, I was able to connect it to any street post in the city and move around from neighborhood to neighborhood if I wanted to. The wireless remote gave me the opportunity to change not only color temperature, but the exposure. And then with the help of some friends, holding out some bounces for me, we were able to make some magic. It didn't take me very long to actually figure out where I wanted to set up. A lot of my friends were already in Soho, and I knew if I came here, I would have some sort of a support group to lean on. And if nobody else stopped, then I could just photograph them, as Will knows. But it also gave me an opportunity to be kind of in this central location between the Q train, the 6, the DFB, the AC. So I had this space where I knew a lot of people were going to be coming in, and a lot of fashionable people, hopefully, would come through. When it came to deciding on a camera, I was really leaning on film a lot at the time, but I realized what I needed was something that had autofocus, that I could kind of just set and forget about it, and let the camera take over and do the photos, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. So these are some photos. I got the camera in 2015, the Leica Q, and I used it all the way up until this project. It was nice, it was fast. I knew that the 28mm wide angle lens would give me a nice perspective on the street. And I knew that 24 megapixel files would actually like not kill my hard drives in today's age. I knew that there was going to be some distortion that I had to work with, and I kind of realized I just wanted to embrace that. So having people lean into the camera to really seem larger than life in a lot of situations. On day one, it was crazy. I photographed Will, and then we wrapped up the day photographing Tony Hawk, who was just skating down the street at the time, and I threw my whole body at him. But there was really no creative direction at that time. I was just out trying to make the photographs and make things work. At the time, we were just talking about doing the project, and it was just going to be a handful of photographs. And early on, I'm just like messing with angles and things like that, but I stumbled on something, photographing this horizontal view with the shallow depth of field and putting the light as close as I could to give us like a really, really nice, close, soft lighting. And then using a bounce to bounce some light back into their eyes or into their hats in a lot of cases. So I started to invite people in. A lot of times people would actually come up to me in the street and they would see the setup and they would be curious about what I was doing. But in some cases I would come up to people and I'd be like, oh my God, your hat is literally incredible. Like the best hat I've seen all day. So if I could photograph you for a second, I would love that. And then I would put up calls on Instagram. You'd have a video up like this. And I would put that I'm outside of Jack's wife Frida photographing, inviting people to stop by. You can see my signs with my little link to Instagram. And people did stop. And I stopped some people. This lady was walking with their partner, and they both had just bubble guns. And I was like, that's so sick. So I photographed the bubble guns. People brought their own personalities to everything. This guy had Donald Duck and wanted to make sure it was featured prominently in the photo. I really wanted people to be themselves, to come into it exactly who they were. In some cases, people looked familiar, like really, really familiar. I just put them together, you know.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes they had cool hats, and I had to photograph the hat at least. But sometimes people had so much personality that I had to stop them. I knew that I wanted to not have a project that was centered just on models. That would be so easy. You go out in the Soho and you could throw a stick and you'll hit a model. Or you'll hit somebody fashionable or something like that. So I knew I wanted to go out and I wanted to represent a wider swath of people. So I stopped the kids down the street that were skateboarding on the curbs. Stopped the random people out for lunch or dinner. The music artists trying to make a music video in front of my setup. People with perfect smiles. And I tried to show people across an age too. When it came to actually posing people, that was interesting. A lot of people came up and some people, like our friend here, knew exactly what he wanted to do. Leaned into the camera, he could put his collar up and really kind of engage with the camera. But other people came in and they had no clue what they wanted to do. So for some people, I would set them up and we'd just kind of walk through it. So we do a couple photos regular, maybe tip your hat, and people would open up. So now we're playing with the necklace, but then now he's comfortable and he shows me what he has to offer too. So we end up with this beautiful photograph. So I didn't start here. I got here by engaging with this person and really bringing this out. Other people, these guys were shooting an ad campaign and they stopped to ask what are you doing out here? So I asked him if he could throw a trash can over his head and he did. Right after the marathon, I had a bunch of people come through and I photographed them, here he is biting his medal. Right around Halloween, I started getting people that would come through and they'd be dressed up This girl came through to pick up her bike, and that bike probably cost her like $30 by the time I was done with her. I was like, if you could just stand here for another 20 minutes, we could photograph, that'd be great. This is another situation where we're just kind of like working through what we have. So you can see like, I took a photo of him and I started to notice things. Like he has tattoos, he has these rings, he has these different things. So I'm like, mess with your glasses. Maybe if you grab your shirt. And it gives us a variety of different looks really, really quickly because people don't have a lot of time on the street. Got a chance to photograph some amazing photographers out there on the street. It's fun to use their cameras as props. Oh, look who walks in late too. In some cases, I got lucky and people had their dogs, so I could photograph their dogs. I love his spiky hair. Just showcasing their necklaces. And again, leaning into the camera and really showing a big personality. Getting a feature on some tattoos. In some cases, we had people that wanted to remain anonymous. They were interested in the project, but they didn't want to be seen. So in this case, I stopped this guy actually. He walked by and he's like, I'm not really interested in being photographed. And I was like, you look incredible. Like, please, please. And I guess he liked my energy enough that he stopped. And he was like, okay, I'll let you photograph me if you can make me anonymous in the project. So he was carrying these flowers and he had this flower jacket. And I was like, this is kind of perfect. I was like, what if we put the flowers in here and you're holding it up, blocking your face? And we just catch your eye looking through the flowers. And it creates this beautiful symmetry between the tree in the background and the flowers this way. And he's kind of just hidden, but he's still part of the project. Of course, there were models that came through, which made life easy because they would just kind of like flow into it. I got really lucky. She actually stopped because some of the other guys photographing asked her to stop by my station. So she came by. And that's what we ended up making. You know, some celebrities in the audience here who came by, I think 3 times to visit me. Every time with a little more personality, and then finally with the boombox, which just kind of like won it for me. See, when it came to posing, it was really just trying to invite people to be themselves in that exact situation. So this girl stopped and she just wanted to be a part of it and just threw a peace sign. Cool. Some cases we had people lean into the outfit using these strings to create a perspective to lead you into her face. And of course, there are plenty of insecurities. I'm not insecure at all, none whatsoever. But in a lot of cases, there were people that stopped and they didn't want to be like perceived in a certain way, or they only wanted to be photographed at a certain angle or from a certain height. And working through those insecurities with them was a really interesting process. And what I found was that like a lot of the times you'd start to photograph somebody and as soon as you showed them the picture and they saw themselves through your eyes, through the camera, they opened up and they were like, oh my God, like I could do this. I could do this. And then they started to pose. A lot of the projects I did during the daytime, but some of the projects came out with the best images at night. This one I thought looked so much like an Apple ad. I was like, we should pitch this to Apple tomorrow. If you guys don't know Ari, he sells those incredible handmade clothes around the corner. You should go buy a shirt and support him. G-Moon. I really started to lean into this time where it was like this blue hour, where you get like, I could set the camera to like a daylight, or I could set the camera and the light to like daylight white balance and let the background go a little blue and create this mood. And then when you have beautiful hair like this, it creates a beautiful composition. More photographers. I tried a couple different locations before I settled on my main stop. So this is over by the Apple building. This is actually using just the light as the majority of the light rather than letting anything reflect to it, which created a different vibe. Another perspective from by the Apple store. This was one of my favorite photos, probably really early on. I think in the second day we were photographing. It was another one of those situations where I had nothing planned. She just walked up and started to model for me. And I was like, what if you like pulled on your braids? What would that look like? And then she just gave me this grin. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. It's another situation where somebody came in, they didn't really know what they were gonna do. And I just had them like brush their hair back. And as soon as they brushed their hair back and they saw that picture, they opened up and they were ready to go. Sometimes I get people laughing. Of course, when I started doing photography, I realized I wanted to go in and start photographing people. And the first project I did was photographing people wearing glasses, which as I know now is hard mode, because you're like, you have to deal with the reflections of glasses. So it was one thing I kept in mind when I was photographing out there. Positioning people's faces so that way maybe I could stay out of the photo. Changing the angle. Or having people tilt their glasses. When it came to the actual edit, everything was pretty easy. I created a preset within Capture One that was based off of Portra 160 that R&I had created. And I kind of tweaked it a little bit to match my own taste. And I basically just used that as a blanket across all the images, allowing me to give everything a cohesive feel and look. This guy passed me up and I was like, dude, you could not go past me with this necklace and this hat. So I chased him down and he's like, you have 2 minutes. You have to make a photo of me, then do it, and you got 2 minutes. And he stood there and I took exactly 2 photos and he walked right away.
I know that guy.
Really?
Yeah, I've known him for 40 plus years.
No way.
Yeah, Neil Martinson.
That's wild.
Yeah. And he always dresses like this.
Oh my God, it was one of my favorites in the series. I was like, this is so beautiful.
I actually photographed him back in San Francisco.
Wow. So it all came together. We ended up with 500 portraits of individual people. That doesn't even include the groups of people that stopped and asked for photos. I photographed some musicians with their crews. It was a really fun time. Altogether, I ended up spending just 35 days in Soho making these portraits. That's it, 35 days. That's it. That's the project. So what did I miss? What did anybody have any questions that I missed along the way?
You missed the dude with the wheel.
Oh, there were some that got away. There's the guy that rides around New York City and balances things on his head. I chased him down 2 different times and he would not stop for a picture. And I was so heartbroken.
Talk about personality and energy when you interact with people, right? Were there any days where you felt like you didn't really have that energy, and how did you manage that?
Yeah, there were several days where I got out and I was like, this is the last thing I want to be doing today. But I kind of realized when I'm in those kinds of moods, if I just get out there and start photographing, if I start interacting, a lot of time things will turn around. So I just started going and interacting with people and complimenting people. And I found that's an excellent way to like turn yourself around, because you tell somebody they look beautiful and then they're like, no, you look beautiful. And I'm like, don't say. Wow.
However, it seems like a lot of the people that I've seen in this presentation are like genuinely laughing and like have really natural smiles. So I guess my question is like, what did you say to them, or how did you create that mood where somebody can like have a smile that's not for a photograph, but they're genuinely like expressing themselves?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's kind of like finding that middle ground with everybody and creating something to talk about. So a lot of times it's talking about like whatever they're wearing or whatever they're doing. Like a lot of times I would open up the conversation asking like, what are you up to today? What did you just get done doing? What are you headed to do? And talking to them about their day. And like really that alone started to open up a lot of people. And they were like, if I was interested in them, they could be interested in what I was doing and give back to it. Yeah, and telling a lot of jokes, being goofy. I think I'm a good goofy person, so.
And then showing them the photograph, and showing them a picture also to get their guard down.
Yeah, absolutely. Like showing somebody the photograph after I've made one or two of them, a lot of the times broke down their guard. I won't say every time. There was one lady that stopped and I photographed her for a half an hour because she was never satisfied with the photos. So there were some situations where it was like I wasn't going to please everybody, but for the most part, it was really good.
Did you miss it when you stopped?
I felt like when I stopped, I had like this purpose for these like 30 days where I was like out here every day. And I came out like, I think like a week later, I came back out and I didn't have the light and I didn't feel grounded to that space anymore. And it felt awkward to be like out on the corner, but without like my tools in a way.
Did Harlow let you keep the light?
Yes. Yeah. Harlow let me keep all the lighting equipment. So huge shout out to them. These things are fantastic. So.
Shit, I need a mic on now.
Can you talk a little bit about like how you came up with the idea or why you did it, and then as you were doing it, how did that evolve?
Yeah, early on, like there wasn't like a real plan. I just went out and I was like, I took it out for that first day and I was like, I'm gonna photograph a couple of people. Like, we'll see what happens. I can make a couple photographs and that'll like fulfill the contract duty with the light. And then I realized like after that first day that people had really connected with it. So I went out the second day and I was like, let's just see. So I started to go out there more and more, and every time I went out there, it started to like snowball into something bigger. And I remember like within a week of being out there, I had photographed 100 people. And I was like, that seems insane. Like 100 people will stop to be photographed randomly on the street. So that ended up creating like this kind of like ball of energy. And one of my friends was like, I talked about stopping at 100. I thought about stopping at 200. And he was like, you have to stop only at 500. He's like, you have to stop at some like crazy number that nobody will believe. So that's what we did. I just kept going out and I hit this goal of 500 of people that I wanted to photograph. And and early on there was no real set in stone way that I wanted to present everything. But once I kind of hit this like look that I really appreciated, like that picture of David back, once I started hitting that, I was able to kind of like lean into it and really decide that this is exactly what I wanted to look like for the majority of the project. So the largest majority of the project is actually all shot horizontally. This is the early photo of David that I shot out on the street. Because before that, I had been photographing a lot of things vertically. It was just something that I was accustomed to photographing portraits and portrait orientation. But yeah, once I stumbled on this, I was like, oh, this has kind of got some magic to it.
When's the book coming out?
When's the book coming out? When I get some money. If you know a publisher, let me know. Okay.
Was there anything you learned about yourself or as a photographer now that the project is finished?
Oh man, probably too many things. I realized that it was like I was much more capable of talking to people than I realized when I started. Because I think like maybe like a year ago, I had decided that I was going to start photographing people on the street and really engaging with individuals. And before that, that was like the scariest thing I could do. Like the idea of going up to a random person and being like, dude, your hat, like, can I photograph you? I would have died. Like I would have just died. But I started to like go out there more and more. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I became. And the more I realized that like most people aren't going to bite me. Maybe some will, but like, you know. Yeah. No. Right?
I think, first of all, congrats. I came a little late, so apologies, but amazing work. Location. So, don't know if you touched on this, but you were very strategic with
Yeah.
where you stood and why you stood there. Do you have any other locations that you would pinpoint for another project or a future project?
Yeah, so we talked briefly about it. Like the location choice was kind of like the first fallback was that I knew the people that were in Soho photographing already. So if like all else failed, I could just ask them to step in front of the camera and I could still get my quota that way. But I realized like something special about Soho is like the interconnectedness of all of the subway stations, the different restaurants, the different things that people have access to in this area. And then just like the people coming through here always seem so interesting to me. So that was a big part that I leaned into. I have taken it like outside of this area. Like I went to the Brooklyn Banks and photographed some skaters on one day. I'd like to take the setup over to Tompkins Square Park and do the same thing. But I also took it to a Leica gallery opening and photographed photographers outside of the Leica store, which was a lot of fun. I would definitely pursue it again as another project if I figure out another way to like pivot it so that it's different than this one. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming, guys. I really appreciate it. I love the support. I think we got a little bit of time. Yeah? 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 I was going to set up the light and photograph people if you guys want to stick around. If you want to stick around, grab another drink. I'm going to set up the light and I'll have everything projected up here and we can walk through how I actually photograph. Thanks, dude.